Pioneers. We wouldn't be at the March Healthcare Classic in 2026 if we weren't spending time understanding the real pioneering efforts in the way that we think about healthcare. And that's not to suggest that the rest of the bracket this year doesn't have its own set of bleeding or cutting edge activities. But this, you might argue, is where the real magic happens. And there are no three better leaders in healthcare to join us in this conversation about the pioneer side of our bracket to help us understand not only from their particular vantage point, but also from their tenure, their pedigree, what they see as real pioneering trending in healthcare over the course of the next 12 months, because that's our charge here at the March Healthcare Classic. Over the next 12 months, what will be the trend or set of trends that will reign supreme? I'm joined by three fantastic healthcare leaders. I'm going to allow them, as I have the habit of doing, of introducing themselves, because I can promise you that with these three, like the rest of our crews, there's no substitute for hearing it straight from them. Dr. David Carmouche, why don't you kick us off here on the pioneering side of our bracket?
Josh, it's great to be back again. I think maybe year 6 or so for me. I don't know, but thanks for having me.
I think there was a blip there somewhere, but you're close.
Whatever. Lots of years. I'm Dr. David Carmouche. I'm the Chief Medical and Commercial Officer at Lumeris. And I've been there for about 18 months and have a long history as an internist and in management roles across payers and health systems and retail, and now in the technology space and AI. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Appreciate it, David. Maybe not a doctor on paper, but certainly one in my heart. Michael Dalton, thought you'd be bigger in person. What do you got?
I'm the CEO and founder of Ovatient. We're a virtual first care delivery company comprehensively built on Epic. And I'm really looking forward to digging in here. Especially, I'm excited around the purchasers and plans. That is a strong bracket. And I'm looking forward to digging in there.
One good doctor deserves another, not to be outdone. Zeev, what do you got?
Well, Josh, thanks for having me on here. You know, I'm a big fan of yours. And David, you guys have really helped guide me through the years. Let's see what I could do here. So my background's in internal medicine, practiced for many years, been a physician executive. Currently, I am the head of strategic partnerships at Rezilient Health, which is a direct primary care, direct to employer provider that partners with healthcare systems. Very novel group. Glad to be here. I have to say, Michael, I'm with you. I think the strongest group here is purchasers and plans. So good to meet you, Michael.
Let's start with you, Zeev. Give us a sort of bird's eye view when you took a look at this year's bracket, and for the folks at home who are tracking this, who are trying to figure out not only how well their picks are going to do, but where they really should be placing their healthcare bets over the course of the next 12 months. What stood out at you when you took a look?
Well, you know, my bias is obviously toward pioneers, and that's why he chose me to talk about it. So a lot to say about that and about the future and innovation. I'm a big fan of providers, being one, always supported them, and policy is important. But listen, the driving force here, the energy is going to be with purchasers and plans. And the reason is very simple. Cost of healthcare, unaffordable. That is the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th problem in healthcare right now. Employers are, in fact, if you look at this, employers are going to rewrite the benefits playbook. They, not because they want to, but they have no choice. And you're going to see a lot of intensity around pharmaceutical, controlling the cost of pharmaceuticals, which are increasing, catching up with hospital costs. You're going to see, and I am seriously biased here, I'll admit it, but you're going to see a tremendous acceleration of direct contracting. In fact, it's already happening. Most people have no idea the percentage of employers around the country that are already contracting with primary care, with surgical, with hospitals. So I think purchasers and plans, I mean, hands down, that's who's going to win this game this year.
Pretty strong. Let's go to you, David. Let's see if your physician perspective equals to or goes in a different direction than Zev's.
Of course, it's going to go in a different direction. I think Zeev has this partially right. I'm not going to argue with his premise that the affordability problem that I've been talking about for, I don't know, my 30-year career is worse in the 31st year than it was in the 30th. And it just gets worse every year. And I do think we're at a bit of a breaking point. And it certainly represents what I think is a theme across many of these teams, which is that a lot of these themes represent tension in healthcare and either challenges or solutions to those underlying tensions. So there's a lot of, I'll call it negativity in the bracket this year versus maybe optimism. Although I think that in the pioneer bracket, we'll talk a little bit about optimism. And I think technology has a role to play even in solving some of the problems that Zeev laid out. So I personally don't think there's any really standout teams in the purchasers and plans bracket. I think it's an interesting collection of teams. I don't think any of them are like clear winners of this tournament. I will point you to a few, I think, interesting, maybe dark horses, Cinderellas, if you will. I like Rural Health Transformation, an 8 seed. I can't believe an 8 seed, $50 billion program, to infuse learnings and transformation, innovation into rural communities as an 8 seed. But so keep your eye out there. And then, we'll get to it. But in our bracket, the 6 seed, consumers taking kind of control of health themselves. And I think technology now and the liberation of data being a facilitator for that. And I think there's some amazing lessons to be learned about what's happening now at ChatGPT and ChatGPT Health with Claude, et cetera. So looking forward to getting into it, but it's going to be a fascinating tournament for sure.
Love it. Michael, round us out. What do you think when you took a look at the full bracket? What came into view for you?
Just looking at policy from providers, purchasers, and plans, I think one of the things that I'm seeing here is that we are a little bit. I love the tension. I think we need to kind of break that tension. One of my favorite basketball sayings is to throw the hammer down. We need to throw the hammer down and break some of the tension that we've seen here today. And I think where CMS I think has done a really nice job, and where we're seeing some of that is what's happening on the policy side. That's my bread and butter. That's my pick and roll. There you go.
That's pretty good.
Thank you. Interoperability is gaining ground. Like, I know it's not sexy, it's not a big deal, but what we just saw, they have pushed forward a new initiative. We've been talking this for 30 years probably, when I was still wearing a diaper. That it's about getting rid of the fax. So we just had information that was coming out about how we're going to move away and finally move down that path. I think for telehealth at a crossroads. I'm a little bit less, bullish on that. I still think I'm biased, but virtual care is going to be in a really strong position. So I do think, while we do have some of these things maybe stalling out a little bit, maybe on the provider side, then we're going to see some stagnation in general. I feel really, really strongly from a policy perspective that we're gaining traction and going to be able to move forward on some of the tension that's there.
I think it's Zeev. We've got dogs in the bracket. We've got dogs in your house. We'll see how this turns out. Let's drill in, guys, with those terrific observations. Let's drill into the world of pioneers. This is your world. The world either you're spending time in now or you focused on throughout the course of your careers, to say the least. But these feel like they are the top 8 areas that the industry is experiencing such significant either momentum or even inhibition around. Let's maybe think with me for a second about what you see when you look at these 8, and then let's go matchup to matchup and give me some observations. So we'll go the same order. Zeev, if you don't mind picking up the mic again, when you took a look at these 8, what popped out at you? What was something that immediately called your name to say, this is what folks need to be paying attention to?
Wow, that's a tough one, because these are all contenders here, and I have to say I'm really in love with a lot of them. I think home-based care is going to scale more. There's no question, as the population is aging, there's going to be an increasing need for that, and that's just I just don't see that as something that is going to slow down. In fact, I think it's going to increase. Um, I think the other thing is AI powering drug discovery. You know, I think what people want more and more is personalized medicine, and so I think those two sort of popped out at me.
Love that. David, what about you?
Well, I mean, I was drawn to the conundrum of femtech funding, but I don't know that. Actually, I'm just kind of kidding. It's probably a thing for some people. Yeah, yeah. So for me, look, I think I'm in the AI space. I think look, there is a reality that there is a health tech ROI reckoning. I mean, there's a lot of action. There's what 500 new probably native AI companies in the last year and a half, 16 new unicorns in the AI space, a lot of activity, a lot of providers are being inundated, payers are being inundated with AI solutions. A lot of the early solutions were point or narrow solutions and relatively complicated and relatively expensive. And I think in a world where especially providers are going to have constrained margins, that we won't be able to afford to just put in technology that doesn't have a very significant ROI, and it kind of really is going to it's going to be incumbent on those of us in the space to think big enough and to bring big enough solutions to have that ROI. So I like that one. I really like the next gen chronic care. I mean, look, I've been a proponent for chronic disease management and primary care specifically forever. You've got the access model now out of CMMI that's focusing on novel ways of approaching this kind of massive tsunami of chronic disease that's consumed so many of the healthcare dollars in this country. So I like that as a 5 seed. That's a really interesting 5 seed. And then look, I think this cell and gene therapy thing is the classic problem in American healthcare, which is with a few strokes of the pen this year, if they go the right way from the FDA, an unleashing of novel therapies that will transform the lives for many people in this country at an exorbitant price tag. And so the question is going to be like, how do we do this as a nation, right? How do we afford life-changing therapies for very rare conditions when our insurance pools aren't in some cases large enough where stop loss premiums are going to go up 25% in some estimates based on this, where healthcare costs are projected to be maybe 8 to 10% and as an annual trend next year, largely driven by pharmaceutical spend. So I just think this is a really interesting set of teams. Those are two that kind of popped up.
Michael, as you hear both Zev and David in their commentary, how does it jive with where your head is at in this side of the bracket? What hops out at you here before we go matchup to matchup here?
I think that's one of the strongest maybe matchups is in number 1 and number 8 because I believe health tech and ROI, the health tech ROI, that there will be a reckoning because what we see when we're looking at our CIOs, chief medical informatics officers, now chief health AI officers, and what they're looking for. Oftentimes, there may be some smaller point solutions, I think, to what David's talking about, but the where they're investing, and I'm still seeing it spend like 65 to 75%, I believe, of investments are still going into their maybe with their EMR, leveraging what they have, and it's going to very specific. Like we're going to follow what Epic, or maybe it's what we have from our other EMR investments that they've made. And so I really think there's been a ton of hype in that space, and the impact is going to be something that's, I think it's still more of a wait and see. It's going to come with the big kind of platform plays that are already in place. I think that's going to create more change management and adoption of the software. So I think that's the opportunity. I am bullish on the end of virtual as an add-on. This is where I come from. I think and when you're talking about a capital constrained environment, being able to say I can create and build a virtual first model or virtual care model that can leverage in-person resources, that's something that really speaks to it. We're doing some research here and for what we've been able to bring to our customers, and it's usually 20% more and in terms of share of care, share of wallet, those are real numbers that CFOs are looking for. So I think that's something of an opportunity. And then I'm really interested around the AI powers drug discovery. There's been a huge amount of research that's gone into that space about finding novel uses for existing drugs and trying to find ways to make more with less. So those are the things that I'm focusing on. Maybe one more just that throw in consumers. I've never heard people talk more about their labs and thing right now, and the different players that are in that space, and really having more information. And what I like to talk about, so long we've talked about like a digital front door. I'm talking about this now as kind of the digital front porch, that patients are there, they're getting those insights from AI, and then they're taking those and having those conversations with their providers, and they're never been more prepared. It's really changing the paradigm for that patient provider relationship.
Love all of the commentary, and sets us up well here to spend the balance of our time looking matchup to matchup. So, Michael, keep the mic for just a minute here, and let's look at the 1 versus 8. You called it out. You're intrigued by it. Let me throw a couple of stats your way quickly, and this will tee it up nicely, I think, for David and Zev as well to lean in. You've got cost containment at the top of the list that employers are thinking about as an evaluation factor as they tighten what their digital health contracts look like around the country, regularly saying we are tired of being point solution to death. We need to see ROI, and we need to see it quickly. And we're not going to give you a contract longer than maybe 2 years, where several years ago we were seeing contracts that were 4 years, 5 years, and perhaps even beyond that. You've got health plans and systems that are increasing their digital health and their AI spend, but they're concentrating it into fewer vendors, and they're really focusing in on what can those few vendors and the capital, not just human capital, but capital that they're spending or getting from, really yield for them, versus the end of virtual as an add-on, where we're sort of at a position now in healthcare, that we can't just say that virtual is an afterthought or we're going to get to it, but rather we really want something that's much more integrated. You could make an argument, and I will, that these are a bit of two sides of the same coin. So I'm curious, Michael, as you take a look at this, you called this one out. What feels like the potential to emerge here? You don't have to make your pick. You can if you want to. Lots of folks are making their picks based on what you tell them. So the pressure is on, particularly since you're in a call center somewhere. But what feels right to you here?
While I really believe strongly in the potential of the end of virtual as an add-on, I'm going to have to go with health tech ROI reckoning.
Just too hard to turn away, right?
Too hard. I think a lot of talking to CIOs, CMIOs, of chief digital officers that are in this space, the pressures that they're getting from vendors and contractors, but also the high rate of variability and I've never heard so many times like, hey, there's a 1 year contract, or here's what we're willing to commit to, because of the high rate of variability and how everybody kind of wants to bake in an AI component. Honestly, like there's more trepidation in saying, okay, well, we're gonna continue to evaluate this before we're gonna be in a long-term commitment. So I would say health tech reckoning that's my pick.
David, you see this one any differently? Anything you'd argue here?
Not argue. I think I just maybe pick up on your notion that the two sides of the same coin. I think the power of virtual plus smart tech is a solution for a lot of what ails us in American healthcare. If you think about the workforce challenges, especially in some subspecialists and certainly in primary care, the reality of it is we're going to need to take fewer people and have them take care of more folks. And you're not going to do that with a bricks and mortar based in-person care model. It just doesn't scale at all. The human capital is the constraint in number of patients that can be cared for and how many touches we can give them. AI, if you think about agentic AI, that is based and grounded in patients' data, and working with a virtual provider, the ability to manage very large populations with a lot of asynchronous AI-driven care, and then humans for the human component, that are needed using virtually is something I'm working on personally. So I really like both of these teams. I hate to see one of them kind of go out in the round of 32 here, but I think that there's a lot of discernment right now around investment here and cost. And so for that, I'd give the kind of the edge to the 1 seed in this matchup.
Zev, do you see that in a way that you could find a line, find a way through, or you feel like between what David's covered and what Michael's mentioned, we've pretty well baked this one out?
Well, if you're asking me what my seed, what I would choose, my selection is number 5, next gen chronic care. I mean, here, here's the thing. All these others, whether you're adding virtual, the health tech reckoning, AI, cell and gene therapy, home-based care, even consumers, they're all pointed at one thing. They're all going after next-gen chronic care because that is the biggest problem in this country right now, the most costly problem in the country. And it fundamentally, like I said before, it's about one thing right now. It's about the cost of care. And so everything is focused at how do we manage, how do we mitigate, how do we prevent, how do we get chronic care into this next gen? Because the way we're doing it now and the way we've been doing it for the last 30, 40 years is clearly not working. So while these others are all important, they all feed into one thing, which is my pick, number 5, next gen chronic care. We have to be using AI, digital therapeutics, virtual care, all the technology, all the gene cell, discovery, all that stuff is pointed towards one thing, and that is developing a better way to approach or reduce or handle chronic care.
Yeah, David, you called this one out when you just took a bird's eye view of this side of the bracket. But do you feel it's as strong as Zev's arguing when you think about the evolution of home-based activity across the country and reimbursement extensions that go with it, the need to push beyond traditional acute care? Certainly, there's an encompassing here of how do we think about a chronic disease burden in the population that's associated with it in the home setting. So you can make an attachment here, but it feels like maybe there's some conversation worth having about what's happening in the home.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the next generation of chronic care management is happening in the home or at work or wherever you are, right? So I do think you're right that they're kind of a bit more related than we might like, not like, more than we might think. So here's the deal, right? I think at the end of the day, when you really get to the full expression of home-based care for acuity, right? For higher acuity, so hospital at home with the surrounding bells and whistles. The question for me has always been, how far can you push that before you disrupt the apple cart of the health system? How much of this is a technology issue versus a logistics issue? And so I think there's still headwinds for home-based care for where it really could make a difference to be fully embraced as the standard. So I don't think we're quite there, although I think we're making great strides. I'm like Zev. I think in this matchup, 4 versus 5, but just this notion that with the tools we have, with remote monitoring, sensors, with AI now, and with really things like contextual clinical decision support, where AI is matching the picture of what's actually happening to a patient to the world's evidence and creating a nudge to a clinician that might lead to better titration or better use of evidence-based therapies. I think we are in a new era of how we deliver chronic care, and I think if you think about the implications that for access in primary care, probably most patients with one or more chronic diseases will have randomly 2 to 4 visits scheduled maybe every 3 to 6 months with a primary care doctor. 70% of the time, they're fine. They're coming in largely for a doctor to take a look at things and say, let's continue on. Well, I think with monitoring and AI, we will know who those 70% are. Frankly, we shouldn't bring them into our office just to tell them they're fine. We should free up those appointment slots for patients who can't get in. And so I really, really, really like the 5 seed here, and I'm glad Zev was drawn to it. Now, Zev, I do want to make sure that you understand how this bracket works, though. I'm not sure if you're a basketball guy or not, but we were doing the 1 versus 8 game first. And then when he went to, then we're going to get out of the 4 versus 5 game, and then we're going to do the 3 versus 6. And so that's how this works. But But you led us into, I think, a very strong team here.
I took it. I took it that he felt like what you guys had to say was so compelling. It was so compelling in the 1 versus 8 discussion. He had no choice but to go exactly where he wanted to go. Next gen chronic care. That's where he wanted to camp.
I think that's probably right because I know he's probably one of the most brilliant authors and speakers I've ever worked around. And so I know he's that. But I just didn't know maybe he was a basketball guy, bracketologist.
Zev, you've been scouting next gen chronic care, that team, probably your whole coaching career, right?
Totally been scouting them. And David, I'll pay you afterwards, David. Thank you. Checks in the mail.
Michael, I know you're in a precarious spot right now. So let's work with you here before
I'm at the gate. I'm at the gate.
yeah, security takes you away, or either onto the plane or into a holding cell for the headset there. Give us the next gen chronic care versus home based thoughts, or I'll give you the option, dealer's choice. Go to one of the other two matchups that you really feel drawn to, and give us some commentary.
I'm going with number 5. Next gen chronic care. They've got. I think they can. I think they can run the table. So when I think about, you've got the power of the policy around the access model that's sitting behind it. I think you've got a lot of tools that are at the from wearables. I mean, really, there's a lot that sits within this initial round for the pioneers that is embedded within next gen chronic care, and I think they have what it takes to run the table.
Michael, while we've got you and you've got the mic here, take a look at the other two matchups. Cell and gene therapy boom, consumers taking health optimization direct. There's already been some reference to that, obviously. AI powers drug discovery versus funding falls short for femtech. What do you like in those two matchups?
I think that consumers taking health optimization direct will beat cell and gene therapy boom for all the reasons that you talked about, David. I just don't think in this environment, with it being cost constrained, you're really putting consumers with their dollars in their hands. They are going to win out versus cell and gene therapy boom. I just think it's really hard at this point to be able to justify the cost. We have all the possibilities in the world, but I think insurers are going to be less likely to be able to be willing to pay it. And so I just think we're in a cost constrained space there. And I think AI powered drug discovery wins out, only because I don't see funding fall short for femtech. I don't want to believe that they're gonna the way that that's positioned. I want them to win, so I believe that if actually they lose how this is structured, that they will not fall short. I think that then AI powers drug discovery will win out because funding will not fall short for femtech. That's what I'm doubling down on.
Yeah, let's talk about the 2 versus 7. Let's go there next, guys. With that terrific lead in by Michael. This is such an interesting trend for us as we look at the industry and spend time in all sort of domain areas. When we look at this team, and in particular, it's a team that feels like it's coming into every tournament right now with less players than the other teams. But the players they've got are really strong. So the idea here of dollars in this area of healthcare at a pretty strong spend area, just not as much as everywhere else. Why is that? When we think about the women's health spend and in the purchaser world, the way that plans are reimbursing, particularly for reproductive therapies and beyond, the way that AI is enabling this space right now, it feels like there should be more here. But David, when you think about this 2 versus 7, and in particular, what I'm calling out here in femtech, not to discount the drug discovery side of the AI-enabled world, where do you see the issues here?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure we've ever had a female team in the men's bracket, so I think kudos to them for even showing up. I mean, and frankly, who's the 8th seed? And who's the 8th seed? Because I don't know how they feel about that. So, this is a conundrum, right? 50% of the population, women, they control 80% of the healthcare choices and spend in the country. So it's like, most of the funding, though, that goes into the kind of the space really is in the reproductive space. And there's all kind of other stuff polycystic ovarian syndrome, menopausal stuff that really just doesn't get funding. I don't have an answer. I'm not an expert. I will say, though, every time I'm with venture capitalists, they're mostly men. And so in some ways, I wonder if this doesn't represent, I don't think they're nefarious, but I would just wonder experiential or biases from those who are cutting checks to these companies, and what interests them, and what resonates naturally with them might be hopefully not too of a cynical guess as to what might be happening here.
Is there any representation? I'm curious from both clinician perspectives. Before we go to the other trend, Zeev, is there any correlation here, do you think, in the decades of underrepresentation on the women's health side of the world in research and trials, where there's perhaps weaker data than in other areas? Do you think there's any corollary there at all?
Well, I think what you said is absolutely true. There's tremendous underrepresentation of women in research. One case in point is the whole kind of wellness field. Most of those studies have been done on men. And so we have very, very little data on what actually works in women. And so, I think what David said is right. They're new to the league. And I think it's just a matter of time before they start catching up and hopefully become a dominant player and dominant team in this league. But I think they're just very, very new to it. And David, you're right. A lot of the VC men, it's dominated by men. And despite the need and despite the market, as you point out, exactly right. I mean, most of these decisions, healthcare decisions, are made by women. It's a huge market, but I think it's just a matter of time before they catch up.
So when you look at the 2 seed, though, it's really hard to turn away from the dollars, both domestically in the United States and globally, that are being put into the drug discovery world. I mean, globally, you're talking about in the several billions of dollars just in 2025 alone that are being really focused in and targeted, not just platform-oriented ways in the drug discovery world. Multiple forecasts projecting growth, $8 to $10 billion just in the next few years alone. Is it a too big of a seed? Do we have a team of big men, big women, big men here? Do we have a team of real serious in the paint players that you can't help but watch and see the promise of?
I think so. I think this is the one of the most phenomenal use cases that we have out there, and probably the right capital behind it to be able to make the investment. So I just think this is, I don't want to say like too big to fail, but I think they have a clear path to at least the round of 8 here, maybe the final 4.
Yeah, David, you feel the same way? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I mean, so there's a real question I have in my mind, because I think this could be maybe one of the most optimistic teams in the tournament. If you think about the impact of reducing R&D costs by maybe 50%, in a world where 90% of drug candidates fail ultimately to get through to the market. I hope that if the hit rate using AI to predict and what molecules will likely be successful, how to construct clinical trials more efficiently. The FDA seems to have signaled that they're willing to kind of skip over some of the traditional animal studies in lieu of computer modeled predictions and activities. All would suggest that pharma manufacturers have the opportunity to bring the drugs to market less expensively for them. And the question for me is, will they translate that into savings for those of us who are paying for the pharmaceuticals? If they do not, and all they do is shorten the time to market with a longer hit rate and then more patent protection to recoup greater margins, it will be a travesty. If, on the other hand, they use that to speed time and lower cost to the market, I hope that's a real positive for those of us who are worried about healthcare costs.
Zev, any commentary there, or would you hone in on that 3 to 6 matchup that's right above it to spend perhaps some commentary time? What do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think two is a powerful team. and the potential for them is huge. So I probably didn't say enough about that, jumping the gun a bit, but yeah, no, I agree with what David and what you were just saying.
Then let's round us out here with the 3 versus 6.
Just the one thing that I think could be the Achilles heel for AI powers drug discovery is all the things that David talked about are phenomenal, but I do worry about some of the bias or that is informing data or what we've seen from AI. So we want to make sure that it is something that is representative. It goes back to what we were just talking about, funding falls short for FemTech. What we don't want to see play out then is making sure that we don't have the evidence, the data, to make sure that those investments that are being made aren't representative of the patient populations that this has such a great opportunity to be able to serve. So that's what I'm going to leave with. I have to jump on a plane. I'm heading to the big dance. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, Michael.
So I think what Michael was saying is he's basically saying a few of the players on this team are ineligible.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard too. I did hear that there's eligibility being called to question, and I think we should put that to the seating committee as we bounce these kinds of things back. Let's round us out here with the 3 versus 6. I really think this is, if not one of the most compelling matchups for me in the entire bracket. And I'll tell you why. I think when you think about in today's world, what this FDA is doing, what this administration has charged this FDA with doing, the lightning speed with which they are moving, and where this sits on their agenda, perhaps under a different administration, perhaps under a different secretary, and perhaps under a different FDA administrator, I might argue a little bit differently, but the numbers speak for themselves. Already in early 26, there are close to 50 approved cell and gene therapy products. In 2025, we were looking at that same number and then some additionally, particularly when you were looking at CAR T therapies, cord blood products, and on down the list. The amount of activity here is really significant, but you can't help but argue with where the consumer orientation is and how we think about choice, demand, supply, what we have access to, what we're more informed about, which I think puts such intrigue here in this 3 versus 6. But I really am curious to hear what the two of you think about this. Zeev, start us out.
Yeah, I think these two teams are both chasing the same goal. They're both about personalized medicine. Right? They're both about consumers taking control and cell and gene therapy. This is about precision medicine, personalized medicine. The advantages with number 3, though, as you point out, with cell and gene therapy. And so, I think consumers, wearing wearables, that is in such an early stage right now. The information is really not that helpful. It's not that useful. I keep on hearing from people who are wearing, all these devices. Well, what's the good? How does it help you? Well, I know if I drink a glass of wine before I go to sleep, that I'll wake up the next day and I'll feel as good as otherwise. Well, I don't need a wearable to tell me that. If I drink more than 2 or 3 glasses of wine, I'm going to wake up with that headache. So I just think we got years before that team is ready. I think to your point, cell and gene therapy is booming. And their players are just powerful, and there's a lot of money behind them. So that's where my vote would go.
I mean, we clearly need to put a bottle of Claritin next to your bed, just to make sure that when you've got that 2, 3, 4 glasses of wine, you've got at least some resolution headed into the night. David, what do you think? I mean, is this as compelling as I'm reading it?
Little CAR T therapy. He needs CAR T therapy. Yeah. So my good friend Will Schrank, who has built now a company, Aerodyne, to deal with this problem, would say I should be all over the 3 seed here. And Zeev clearly is drinking that Kool-Aid. I actually think he's dismissing the 6 seed a little too quickly. And let me give you a few stats to back it up. Kaiser Family Foundation this month said 32% of all U.S. adults start their healthcare journey with ChatGPT or Gemini. That's insane. In 2 years, a third of us in this country start our healthcare journey by going to AI to get feedback. 40 million daily healthcare interactions with ChatGPT in this country. 25 million for Gemini, 3 million for Perplexity. So I would say what we're seeing there, the impact here is less about the technology. And frankly, Zeev, I agree with you, but less around the impact. I think it's very much about what does it tell us. So I heard someone say, I've never heard people talk so much about their labs. Well, don't you think that what's happening there is that people aren't getting this information from their healthcare delivery system? So we think we solved it when we had patient portals and Epic, and we made their labs available to them. Well, the fact of the matter is, when it's abnormal, patients want to understand it, and we're not very good as a healthcare system at dealing with problems as defined by patients. So listen, I think this is kind of the canary in the coal mine. I think we who've come from kind of legacy healthcare need to pay attention to why consumers of healthcare are looking to unproven AI for something that feels more responsive to them than their traditional healthcare system, because I think it has massive implications for where healthcare could go over the next several years. So that's why I like the 6th seat.
See, that's why I like the March Healthcare Classic. That's what this is really all about. It's the compelling matchups and the close, the understanding of nuance and where teams begin to emerge. Athletes that you didn't perhaps on paper think were going to perform as strong, and then suddenly you've got the upsets, the 6s versus the 3s. You've got the 7s versus the 2s. My last question for the two of you, close us out strong here, guys. Do you think there is a tournament winner in the Pioneer bracket?
I think there are 2 potential winners in this one bracket that could win the entire tournament.
You want to name them?
Yep, I do. I think number 5 could win this tournament, and I think number 6 can win this tournament. If people were swayed by my kind of perspective, if they think that Zeev's got this right, which is it's an interesting young team. Look out for them in a couple, 3 years, then maybe not. But if you see it like I do, based on kind of how I explain that, then I think it could win the tournament.
Zeev, you see it? You see it the same? Any different?
You took the words right out. I think number 6, Consumers Taking Health Optimization Direct, is a young team. Come back to me in about 5 years, and I think they'll be a powerhouse. Right now, there's no question Next Gen Chronic Care is going to win.
I love that. I love the optimism. I love the pioneering mentality that the two of you not only bring to the March Healthcare Classic this year, but also have throughout your career. It's a privilege to be able to share the screen with you guys, as well as the thinking, and appreciate immensely your time and your energy around this. Thank you both, and thank you, Michael.